各位来宾，大家早安！感谢大家莅临台北市立美术馆参加2024国际策展论坛。今年的主题是演变的风景：危机及转机时代里的当代策展。本次论坛由台北市立美术馆与立方计划空间联合举办，邀请到众多重量级的专家学者，精彩可期。今天是论坛的第一天，我们将进行一场专题演讲、3场座谈以及1场圆桌讨论。在活动开始之前，首先我们请台北市立美术馆王Jun-Jieh馆长上台致辞，请大家掌声欢迎。
Good morning and welcome everyone. 大家早安。我仅代表台北市立美术馆欢迎所有参与本次国际策展论坛的贵宾。台湾在整个艺术发展的进程当中，策展作为一门专业，无论是观念或者是策展的意识的启蒙，包括专业技术或者是机制的引进，从策展作为一门学科在台湾生根发芽，到今天已经至少超过20年的时间。这20年当中呢，台湾经历了许多在政治、经济及文化环境跟体制上面的巨大的转变，也同时经历了全球化的洗礼。那这段时间呢，跟国际的脉动既平行又交叉的这个轨迹当中，台湾的策展专业也一样的经过了在地化的一个不同阶段。特别是在2021年新冠疫情爆发以后，整个世界的秩序大乱，数位跟科技的划时代发展也挑战了真实跟虚拟的界限。国际局势的动荡不安，生态危机更是我们今天所面临的最严峻的挑战。在这个当中，到底美术馆它所扮演的角色应该是什么？在文明的发展跟人类未来的这个历程当中，我们到底还可以做出什么样的努力？所以在这个后全球化的时代，这是我们非常需要思考的问题。北美馆作为台湾第一个现当代的美术馆，40年来，它的整个的历程也可以看成是台湾的这个艺术发展的一个缩影。北美馆从1998年开始到今天已经筹办了13届的台北双年展，那也把台北纳入亚洲甚至于全球当代艺术的一个网络当中。此外，台湾也筹办了威尼斯的美术双年展，各式各样的跨领域的专题的展演，还有儿童艺术教育的展览。它其实都展现了北美馆的策展能量跟兼具艺术机构的公共性这样的一个特质。那譬如说我们正在进行的北美馆的扩建计划，也把未来艺术纳入了这样的一个思考当中。我们也期望能够展开更深刻的对未来发展跟实践这样的一个意志。也正是因为这样，所以我们非常的重视这一次跟立方计划空间的合作。那这一届2024国际策展论坛演变的风景、危机及转机时代里的当代策展，是承接2019年也就是5年前，也是一样跟立方计划空间一起合作的这个国际策展论坛的脉络，再次的聚焦在当代策展学这样的一个领域当中，讨论技术如何影响创作跟展示的一个转变。还有最重要就是说，在地缘政治风行的这个当中，文化艺术到底应该如何在这个当中达到一个实践的一个路径？那这2天的国际论坛，我们邀请到非常多国际知名的专家学者，还有台湾本地的专家学者 共同为大家来分享他们相关的策展实践的经验。我相信大家在这个2天的活动当中一定会满载而归，也谢谢大家的莅临祝福大家，谢谢。
谢谢王馆长的致辞。接下来，请本次论坛的共同主办方立方计划空间郑慧华总监上台致辞。
谢谢谢谢馆长的引言跟开场那我发现馆长已经把我要讲的我们写了一样的稿子，但请大家包容，我可以再复述一下。首先，同样的，我要欢迎这一次远道而来的所有的讲者和贵宾。你们这一次来到大家真的从蛮远的地方来到台北我们要表达我们最诚挚的感谢，而且我们怀着非常期待的心情，能够听到你们带来的洞见跟分享。其次是欢迎所有的听众现在来到2024CIT 24国际论坛。我感到非常的荣幸能够在这里，在这个策划了将近1年的过程里面，为这个论坛做一个引言。因为我们真的非常的期待这个次是一个能够延续探讨当代策展的方法和思想的一个很好的一个讨论会。CIT 24呢，我们关注策展实践，并从这里开始，并且更加想要聚焦超越策展这件事情本身相关的更大的层面，包括了文化的观察。所以我们希望通过策展来关注当代文化今日与生活的各种关系，以及它和文化生产之间的关系。上一次的 CIT 举办于2019年，诚如刚刚馆长所说的2019年之后，我们世界上经历了一个巨大的转变。原本 CIT 是希望2020年可以继续的举办，但是也就是在 COVID-19 的爆发之后，它打乱了所有人的行程跟安排。这些前所未有的冲击呢，改变到今天已经从各个面向挑战了我们人类的生存跟认知。所以如果我们今天回头来要来谈策展，把策展当作一种媒介，我们通过它去实践和思考的话，同时我们也是要希望能够建立人和世界的一种新的认识论和方法学。在过去这几年之中呢，我们活在所谓的人类式的文明轨迹里面，我们发现过往的人和自然，我们人和社会的关系出现了迥异的变化和张力。那么艺术生产在作为文明运展中间的一环，我们有必要来做出迫切的回应。所以本次的论坛，我们希望以下几个方向来进行。首先是在面对这个剧烈的转折的时代，策展还如何可能作为各种知识生产和文化思辨的积极方法。而面对人类的精神世界、感知机制的改变，我们面对各式各样人为、自然、灾难、变异来袭，那么策展又可以触及什么样的关键的议题呢？ CIT 24希望能够叩问这些急迫的问题，并且在这个时代的转向当中，勾勒出关于当代策展所应该要具备的动能。道德经说，祸兮福所倚，福兮祸所伏。充满危机，其实同时也意味着它蕴藏了巨大的转机。那么我们如何将此思考至策展的方法上面，如何重新思考我们的现在和未来？在我们的论坛当中，我们还同时将讨论技术的革命为现在的策展所带来的冲击或转变。最后我们要回归到再探地缘政治当中的艺术实践是什么。当然这几个面向的主题呢，并非是各自独立的，它是一种总体观察下我们分镜合集来综合的讨论。CIT 24非常荣幸能够邀请到7位 来自世界不同区域的主题讲者，对时下的艺术体制、区域观点、策展思想的演变提出他们深刻的洞见和观察。我们迫切的也深沉的热切的希望通过这次能够与台湾的艺术工作者共聚一堂的机会，我们要持续建立跨地域的对话和交流的网络。现在容我再用一点点的时间向大家初步介绍这7位讲者，分别是沙迦艺术基金会的主席 Hoor Qasimi， 日惹双年展基金会的总监 Alia Swastika， 纽约大都会艺术博物馆现当代艺术部的策展人马维忠，还有密西根大学斯坦普斯艺术与设计学院荣誉院长和教授 Gunalan Nadarahan， 杜拜伊莎拉艺术基金会的总监 Sabi Ahmed。但是这边也先跟各位来宾讲一下，就是 Sabi Ahmed 因为有非常紧急的事情，所以他必须回到印度，他在这一次没有办法亲身来出席，但是他非常体贴的为我们准备了事前预录的演讲，所以大家同样可以在明天下午的时间里面聆听到 Sabi 的演讲，以及新加坡美术馆策展及研究的总监叶德金，还有最后我们还有一位来自台湾台北北美馆的展览组组长简正怡。他们这7位讲者所来自的地方都有不同的文化脉络，大家一定感受到了这次的论坛，我们希望能够挪移我们既有文化地缘的视野，从不同的脉络来建构关于策展论述的一个新的叙事。所以现在事不宜迟，让我们紧接着就来欢迎我们第1天的主讲演讲者，聆听他精彩带来的分享。我也同样祝福大家都能够在这2天里面得到非常丰富的收获。谢谢。
谢谢郑总监的致辞。现在我们要进行的是今天的专题演讲，题目是双年展与地方。我们有请本场次的主持人王Jun-Jieh馆长上台引言。
好，我们北美馆非常荣幸可以邀请到Hoor Qasimi作为我们这2天的论坛的第1场的 Keynote。那他目前是担任阿拉伯联合大公国沙迦艺术基金会的主席兼总监那从2003年开始。他也担任著名的沙迦双年展的总监。那他策展的经历非常的丰富包括第15届为人津津乐道的沙迦双年展。那另外他也是2025年日本爱知3年展跟2026年雪梨双年展的艺术总监。那后他目前也同时担任国际双年展协会的主席，还有沙迦非洲学院的主席，另外还担任沙迦建筑3年展的总监然后同时他也负责了一个全新的沙迦全球研究大学的计划。那我们希望透过他这么精彩的经历来跟我们谈一谈他的策展经验他今天的讲题是双年展与地方，我们掌声欢迎 Hoor。
Thank you for the invitation, Amy and everybody who worked so hard to get me here. Sorry, I was all over the place whenever they would message me, but it's a privilege to be here. It's been a long time since I've been in Taiwan, so I'm happy to be back. Before I start speaking, I just want to say a few words about the current world we're living in and how important it is for us to share our platforms. We're in a space of privilege. You know, we have the space to gather. We have the space to breathe. A lot of our friends, artists, colleagues are right now in places like Beirut, Palestine, Sudan, really undergoing a genocide right now in every sense of the word. you talk about environmental sustainability. You know, it's fine to think, you know, should I print something out or should I not? They're getting white phosphorus bombs dropped on them. If this is not an environmental threat, I don't know what is. The Congo, the extraction that is happening in Congo is creating such a genocide. The number of children dying working as child labor in Congo is something really serious. So it's really important for us when we work globally not to think of the art world as an echo chamber. We are really here as a community of representatives. You know, we're here to give voices to people who aren't able to have their voices heard. I urge every one of you to really open your eyes and see and check on people and see what is happening around the world. It's important to think of places, as I mentioned, of Palestine, of Gaza, and the West Bank, an occupied Palestine, to think of Lebanon, to think of Yemen, to think of Sudan, the Congo, Kashmir, everywhere that is facing these kind of oppressions. We also have to think of the plight of indigenous people who really have their land really violated for extraction. Just for our technology, the world is actually being destroyed and people's lives are being destroyed. So I just wanted to say a few words to mention all of those people who we're thinking of every day and every night. So thank you. I'm going to start with my own personal journey. So I grew up with Sharjah Biennial. As you could see, this is what Sharjah Biennial used to look like in 1993. We had a tent called the Expo Center that hosted the Sharjah Book Fair, lots of trade fairs, as well as the biennial every 2 years. So I was 13 years old. I used to visit. I wanted to be an artist. And then I went to study. I went to art school in London. And I was always interested in curating because I met many artists in London who said, you know, unless you know people, you're not going to have an exhibition. It's all about nepotism. Nobody gives us a chance. So I thought it was really important to try as much as possible to give the platform for artists who maybe don't know, you know, they don't know the people that you need to know. And that's why I try to do as many studio visits everywhere I go. So I co-curated my first show when I was 17 at Sharjah Art Museum on 21 British artists working in new media. And then I went back to art school. And I just finished my painting degree at the Slade, but while I was in London, I realized that there were no voices like mine. I had one of our professors would say to me, your paintings are not very Islamic. So I was wondering why I was thrown with this assumption or stereotype. I never called myself Islamic or anything, you know, I was just an artist, I'm a painter. And there was another artist in my year from Taiwan, and he told your work is not very Chinese. So I realized that this is a real problem, that there aren't spaces for people like us. And everywhere I went, the exhibitions were all very similar. It was mainly like old white male artists. And then I got into the Royal Academy for my master's, but I decided to take a year's gap. Long story short, I ended up in Documenta, which was Okui and Wizor's Documenta 11, in 2002. And I was visiting just as an artist, and I was completely transformed. I realized that these are works talking about politics of our time. There were artists from Palestine, artists from South Africa talking about apartheid, and I realized the space for art is really politics. It's important for us to use that space to find common ground between us and other people. It's only when we come together in places like this or through biennials that we understand actually our fate is very similar. People are going through similar things in different parts of the world, and we need to understand each other because the problems happen when we don't understand each other or we get told lies about each other. So I decided, we have a biennial in Sharjah. Yeah, how does that work? I just want to see. And I'm not going to interfere. I just want to see. But I started asking so many questions, too many questions. And 6 months before the opening, they said, oh, you just do it yourself. And I did, and it's been my job for 22 years now. So this is a picture from 2017, actually. I don't have a picture of the same space now. This was the biennial that my colleague Christine Tome curated. She is in Beirut right now, struggling as we speak. So what happened is we moved out of the expo tent because I really wanted the Biennale to engage in the city. I thought it was very important that it's not a place that is a trade center where people go to buy things or have a fair, because that was very commercial for me, and I wanted to push it to the more public space. So here are some images of the locations that we use. This is a Beit Shamsi. This is a residency space. It had artist studios there since the 80s and 90s. So we were very much in the arts area of Sharjah. And now we have, since 2003, we have 2 residency spaces there. And you can see we're next to the shipyards. We're really next to many members of the community. Next to us on the right, there's a whole shop of tailors. The sailors on the boat, they always come, and a lot of them participated in projects with us, so they come and see our exhibitions. In 2013, Yuko Hasegawa was a curator of Sharjah Biennial, and she really wanted Apichatpong to design a cinema. So this plot of land was meant to be part of our expansion, but we had this temporary cinema built, but it became a permanent cinema. It's still there now, and we host all of our screenings. We have our annual film festival that happens. It's opening on the 15th of November this year. So one thing that I've become kind of known for is finding old buildings and stopping them from being demolished. I have to say that I'm pleased I won more than I've lost. There are quite a few that I wasn't able to save. Thank you. And this is one that I'm still trying. I mean, I've saved it from demolition, but I'm still trying to raise the money to renovate it. It's an old cinema on the east coast of Sharjah, which is a mountain location. Mountain and seaside. So we're in the process of working with architects to renovate it, but my funding fell through 3 times, so I'm hoping next time it happens. But as I mentioned, we don't, for me, the Sharjah Biennial, we left the expo center, so we started with no physical space. We just use any spaces people will give us. And more we started using abandoned spaces, and we designed some permanent galleries that we use throughout the year. So this is the inside of the cinema. We've used it in 2013. Shazia Iskandar did a project filming inside, and we've done research, but we've never been able to get members of the public inside because of health and safety. And I was talking to Sufyan Wisi, who you can see performing on the stage. The cinema is known for having lots of pigeons inside. And he said, I would love to do a performance and dance with a pigeon. So we had to do a disclaimer and give everybody, all these warnings. If you're scared of birds, if you have, an allergy to dust, if you're claustrophobic, if don't come. But it was very well received, and this performance is on tour now. But it was really inspired by the cinema that's slowly decaying. So that was part of Sharjah Biennial 15 for 2023, in which I started working on in 2018. I invited Okwi Envisor to curate the 15th edition of Sharjah Biennial. He was very sick at the time, but he said yes, he would do it because he could see that I was really inspired by his documenta, and he was very supportive throughout my career since then. He left me with the title, Thinking Historically in the Present, and a number of keywords, post-colonial keywords. So I decided, he passed away before we were able to work on the show properly, and because of COVID, we postponed by 2 years. So I decided to invite artists that he's worked with, artists that I worked with, artists that we both worked with, and artists none of us worked with. So it was a little bit confusing for people trying to understand who invited whom. But Okwe actually only invited one person on the list. This artist, Gabriela Golder from Argentina, I wanted to show two of her older films in the biennial, and she mentioned this new project she was doing called Aranjar los Ojos, Tear Out the Eyes. And it talks about the protests that were happening in Santiago in Chile in 2019. So I happened to be in the protests, and I thought that it was such a powerful piece talking about how in many protests, the protesters' eyes are always targeted. So she was working on a new film, but also a performance. We worked with the Academy for Performing Arts in Sharjah, where the students were performing. And we dug these craters in the hole. And it was very powerful. We should have a video online. So another venue. So in 2019, we had the first edition of Sharjah Architecture Triennial. I established the triennial with my late twin brother, who was in charge of the urban planning department. I really wanted to have architecture not under art, but under a different thread, so connected to urban planning and to the city. I realized that we could do things that we can't do under the Arts Foundation, but at the same time, it gives architecture its own space. So under the Architecture Triennial, there was a major plan to demolish some of these, at that time there was a major plan to demolish some of these buildings to build a bridge to relieve the pressure of traffic from Dubai or to Dubai. So I fought very hard, and they ended up not building the bridge. And we used this building for the first edition of Sharjah Architecture Triennial in 2019, and we've used it for the biennial since then as well. So this is the inside. We have the work of Iftikhar Dadi and Elizabeth Dadi from Sharjah Biennial 15. It was very important for me to have these flowers inside the market, because when this market moved away, the vegetable market just moved across the road with the fish market and meat market, but the flower market moved really far away. So in a way, I wanted to have this resonance of a part of history that was really kind of displaced. And the flowers really talk about countries that are going through displacement and division. So the hibiscus from Sudan, etc. Also from Sharjah Biennial 15 is the performance by Aboriginal Australian artist Brooke Andrew, where he worked with a lot of local practitioners. So it's really important that when artists come to the biennial, that there is a collaboration with people there. It's not only about the place, but also about the people. So he worked with the local ceramicists to create the structures you see in the middle. He worked with a local band to perform, and a local spoken word artist, as well as another musician. So it was really, again, a lot of these performances should be on our website or on our YouTube channel. You can watch them. So it's really important that a lot of these projects have a long life and presence. Another site-specific project, Annalie Davis and Yuri Griffin, where it's a plot. So Annalie Davis lives in Barbados on an ex-plantation site. So it's really looking at the plantation sites and how people who lived on the plantations as slave labor used to plant the crops that they need. So it's really about looking at decolonization, looking at the history of plantations, and understanding the role of what these medicinal herbs really had. John Akamfra's Arcadia. I always use this picture because I really like the image of the crowd there. So another building that we worked with and slowly started planning the renovation of it is the Kalba Ice Factory. It's actually an old fish feed factory that was on the East Coast, but it was a prefab building from Germany in the 70s. but it was never used. The people didn't want to use it. It ended up being used by fishermen to store ice. So it became known as the ice factory, when technically it's not an ice factory. So this is a debate I still keep having with my father all the time. But anyway, the people call it the ice factory, so we call it the ice factory. And we started using it as a shell for a number of editions, and since that time, the area around us started developing. So, you know, you have to also kind of develop with your neighbors, otherwise it becomes an eyesore that gets knocked down. I worked with architects from Peru, from Lima, and I asked them if we could extend this section to build apartments and residency spaces. So you can see on the right, we have some apartments there now. We have 6 apartments because our building faces this way, but the view is this way. So we have 6 apartments there for residencies, artists and writers and filmmakers, and everyone can come. So this was the inside before the renovation. The first project was Adrian Villaroja, 2015, and Mohau in 2019. Both the curators of 2013 and 2017 didn't want to use the space. They said it was too far. Is that? Yeah. This performance I did with an Emirati painter who wanted to do a painting performance looking at the history of East Africa and the UAE, and a lot of the people that came to from East Africa as sailors and died in sea. So he called it the unknown sailor. He wanted to have a soundtrack of the special kind of seafaring music, but I suggested a local band from Sharjah, so it became this collaboration between the band and Abdurrahim Salem. I'm showing you this because I took this performance later to Cuba. Doris Salcedo, Uprooted. This was also one of the award-winning pieces of the last biennial. Looking at migration. Barbara Walker, looking at the Windrush generation. If those of you who don't know, in the UK, a lot of people came on the Windrush to the UK to help build the UK, and now when they're in their 70s and 80s, they're being told to go back to their country. So it's this idea of having to show your papers. The guy here on the left actually was a very well-known case. There's a film about him as well. So Barbara went and interviewed a lot of these people and created this project called The Burden of Proof. So having to prove, I mean, one person, he had to prove that his children were his children because his children were British and his partner was British. But still, they put him in detention because they called him an illegal immigrant, even though he's been living in the UK since he was a child. So it's really important that these stories are being told through artists. Isaac Julian, once again, Statues Never Die. This is a project where, so a lot of times we think that in biennials have to be competitive or exhibitions have to be competitive, but right now we're all looking towards helping the artists, but also supporting each other. We need funding. Everybody needs funding for the project. So it's really important to collaborate and work together. This project was a co-commission with the Barnes Foundation and the museum in Philadelphia. So when I postponed the biennial, my biennial was meant to be March 2022. And Isaac said, I am not going to be ready with the piece is not going to be complete. And I said, anyway, I want to push it to 23 because another artist, Destiny Deacon, her partner of 40 years also passed away during COVID. So it's important to not put pressure. We're all going through so much during COVID. We don't have to have the show now. It's okay. 2 years, it's fine. We'll just, work on it. And he said, but then it has to premiere. I can't miss the date in Philadelphia because it has to open in November. And I said, it's fine. Let them open first. Really, it's not a competition. Let them open first. We open later. It doesn't matter. And it was great because the number of people who see both shows are such a small percentage. And even if they see it twice, it's in a different context, a different place. So I think that's something that we see changing a lot in the curatorial world. The curators are not competitive anymore. People want to work together, which is really nice. This is another building. So you can see architecture coming in and out of the work that I do. The Flying Saucer. So this was built in the 70s in Sharjah. Actually, it opened as a French bakery in the 70s, and then it became a supermarket. So it was like this bottom, bottom right. When I was growing up, it was Al Mayalal supermarket, and then Al Mayalal split up, and it became Al Maya or one of the others, and then it became the Sharjah Co-op, and then it became a fast food grilled chicken place. So when we took it over, it was the grilled chicken, and I let them. We got the building, but they were paying us rent for a while because we didn't have the money to renovate the building. But in 2015, with the Biennale that Jun-Jieh curated, artist Hsiang-Ling did an intervention there, which I don't know if I have a picture. So we did one renovation, and then after that, I wanted to really bring it back to its concrete shell, brutalist design. So we opened it up, which was a bit like the one on the top left. But I started getting messages from the people living in the neighborhood. They said, "Oh, you should turn it into a cafe." And I said, I took out the restaurant because I wanted this amazing space. But I realized they were telling me that they don't have a cafe in the area where they can work and study. So I remember hearing that there was a storage in the basement, maybe a room. So I said, "Oh, can we go down by a level and create a basement level that could be more the community space?" But we didn't want it to be a dark space, so we created a little light well, which is like a conservatory. I don't know if I have a picture. No. So the light comes down, and there's a cafe and a library and workshops, and we created a piazza on top. So a lot of our renovations take time because really it's important to occupy the space, see how people in the area feel about it. Maybe something that we decided we wanted to build actually isn't feasible and wouldn't work well. So that helps. And also we can phase it out budget-wise. So here I jump to my project in the Lahore Biennale in 2020. So for me, biennials are really about places, right? You can't just transport one exhibition from one country to the other. Otherwise, it's a museum exhibition. It's really important to think about the place you're in, the artists that are there, and the connections that can be made. There was one project by a Kazakh artist, Almagul Menlibayeva, and she wanted to do a project on the observatory of Samarkand. And I said, "Oh, that would be amazing if there was a planetarium." But they didn't show us any planetarium. It was the old fort. So it was our second option. Plan B was the fort. And I asked somebody in the team who was looking online and said, "Oh, there is a planetarium, but nobody's answering the phone." I said, "Well, let's just go." And we went, and the guy at the gate said, "Okay, come back in 1 hour." We went in, and the planetarium has a giant plane on the plot, and it says PIA Airlines. And I said, "Isn't this one of your sponsors? Like, can't they let us use it? They're your sponsors. It'll be the best advertising for them. It's a giant plane, and their name is on the planetarium." So they let us use it. We cleaned it up because it was closed for a long time. It was pretty filthy, but it was such a beautiful space. I don't have the insides, but again, it's this idea of transforming spaces, and I think they've used it for something else, but they're not using it for this edition of the Lahore Biennale. A Pakistani artist, Imran Ahmed, came to me with many projects, and he wanted to build this temple. Actually, he wanted to do it about this size, and I kept seeing the space in the entrance hall of Punjab Institute for Language and Culture. And I said, "You know what, Imran, let's just go big. This is a biennale. It's not about selling your work in a gallery." Because everything he was showing me was something that his gallery could sell, or you could see that there's a lot of pressure from the commercial side to do things that they could sell. And I said, the biennial is a chance to do things that, doesn't matter. So we went really big. He creates these tiny ceramic figurines that were part of they're historic terracotta figurines from the whole area around India and Pakistan. And he did the other project on bread and Urdu poetry, which is right behind. And we built a kiln outside the institute, and we baked bread. So it was really, I think it was a big change for him to be able to challenge his style and go big. I invited Barbara to do this project in Lahore. So Lahore Biennial was before Sharjah. This is a work of hers that I saw in the Venice Biennale in the Diaspora Pavilion. She does these charcoal drawings of West Indian soldiers that were fighting for the British. And I realized, you know, in Pakistan was also really important with a lot of South Asian people fighting for the British and losing their lives. So we did it in an old colonial market in the entrance hall. Bradlaugh Hall is another space that talks about the histories of partition. It's named after Charles Bradlaugh. And in it, I showed the films of Zarina Bimji, Yellow Patch, as well as Season Outside by Amar Kanwar in another space, and other artists. So this building, we had to enter through basically a hole in the wall. And since then, the building has been listed to be conserved and protected. Then I was invited to participate in a small biennial performance biennial that happens in Tunis called Dream City, actually organized by Sufyan and Salma, the performer who was dancing with the birds. So they do a performance biennial, but they started including visual arts, and they asked me to curate a section. This is Neil Yalter's work, Exile is a Hard Job, and it's been traveling to many cities where you have Exile is a Hard Job written in various languages. A space, again, that I just walked into. The door was open, and I just walked inside. And there's this stunning space, and I asked what it was, and it's an association of a women's school, women's association. And I asked them if I could use the space and show the works of Munira Sulh, a Lebanese artist, who does these tributes to known women writers, Arab women writers. And we installed it in the space. One space that I, again, wanted to transform. So they used this it's an old barracks called Kazarn or Qashlat al-Atarin. And the way that it was used in the previous biennial is where everyone is sitting, they had scaffolding, and they used some of the rooms for videos. And I said, okay, so let's have a look at this building. Why is the scaffolding here? Is it holding anything? They said, no. Just in case we need to do anything, the scaffolding is there. But can we take it down? And then I said, why are all these rooms closed? They said, stockage. It's all storage. Everything was storage. And I went in, and there were such amazing archives and books. It was an old library, and everything was there but dumped on the ground, covered in dust. There was like moldy bread. And so I said, okay, let's clean this place up. When everyone asked me, what's your job as a curator? I would say, I'm a cleaner. I would just clean. So we spent the whole summer cleaning the space. And they said, oh, but what do we do with all the things? I said, we put them on the shelves, and we bring this library back to life. So we brought this library back to life. We created a social space. One of the patrons of the Biennale has a chain of coffee shops. So I asked her if she would have a coffee stall in the entrance there. And we had some video rooms upstairs, and downstairs we had 3 publishers sell their books in some booths. And I have a little video which I can show you. Just a quick one I took on my phone. And it was busy as soon as we opened at 10 a.m., so many young people were coming in because they never have access to spaces like this. We put Wi-Fi and had a working section, and our talks programs were always oversubscribed. So it's very special, and now they've kept it like that. It's just a short clip. Okay. And then you see some more pictures also of the exhibition in Tunis. I invited the artist Michael Rakovitz, an Iraqi artist based in Chicago. He has a ongoing project on the history of his grandfather and opening a date shop in Brooklyn, trying to bring in import dates during just after the Iraq War. So this idea of movement and navigation and everything there were sanctions against Iraq, so there was a whole issue on how to bring in dates, but a lot of dates or date products would come in, but it would say product of Lebanon, for example. So he became friends with this date farmer in Iraq, and tried to import dates. And there's a whole film about it. So Tunis was very famous for dates. Every time I walk around, I kept seeing dates hanging outside some shops. Sometimes I see spaces and they remind me of artists I know. So I said, okay, Michael, I saw these dates and I'm thinking of you. Let's open up the shop in Tunis. So we opened up a shop. We made a sign, Davidson's & Co. There's his picture, his grandfather's picture. And we had date tasting, and we spoke about the history of this situation between the US and Iraq and all the products that were there. So that's something that can really relate to a lot of the local people in Tunis, and it was very well received. Another space that I saw, because they used it for a talks program, they had a structure built so people would sit in the space, but I noticed that this architectural structure was a circle. It was cutting through the fountain. You had your back to somebody's grave, and you had your back to an olive tree and a fig tree. And I said, I'm really uncomfortable with this space. I said, oh, this is how we do the talks program, and we'll use it this way next year, next year meaning the year that I'm doing it. And I said, no, can I do something else? They said, oh, fine, we'll move somewhere. We'll move the structure somewhere else. With the olive trees, it reminded me of this Palestinian artist, Khalil Rabbah, who has a whole series of works around Palestine, the Museum of Palestinian Civilization, with the olive trees as really something that holds a lot of space. This courtyard already had a plaque called the Museum of Sidi Bukhrisan, which is the grave, Sidi Bukhrisan. So we called it the Museum of Sidi Bukhrisan in collaboration with the Palestinian Museum of Natural History and Humankind. So that's Khalil cleaning. Again, we're just cleaning. That's curators' roles. And that's the space, and we had many works around the space, and you could see the sign. We did a whole gathering around. Tunis is also very famous for olive and olive oil. So again, we wanted to bring this connection through Palestine and Tunis, talking about historical moments as well as support for the Palestinian cause with Tunis for a very long time, but also tasting olive oil together and talking about olives. So we created this plaque, and it's still outside the space now. Oops, now I'm in Cuba. I have projects of different scales. So in Matanzas, I was invited by an artist who runs a biennial, Maria Magdalena Campos Pons, from Matanzas, Afro-Cuban artist. And she asked me to work on a project for the biennial this year called Rios Intermitentes. I couldn't do the whole thing because they decided to have the biennial happen throughout many months until December because of many reasons. So I said, I'm going to do 5 projects in April, and that's it. And I visited the year before to understand what's the temperature like when the biennial opens, who are the people that I want to work with. And I spent time in this neighborhood called La Marina. Matanzas is one of the most Afro-Cuban parts of Cuba, and La Marina is one of the most Afro-Cuban parts of Matanzas. So it's really a black neighborhood. And you could see the resources are very limited in Matanzas compared to Havana. And also in La Marina, the situation is pretty bad. So I saw this location and visited a school run by an artist. It's a children's school. The school is the size of where I'm standing. This is the classroom, literally. And you have all these little tiny kids sitting on the window. next to them was this plot. So I recently met an artist in Costa Rica because I thought, language is important. I'm not going to come speak to them in English. I'm not going to bring an artist from the US or Europe to talk down on them. I'm going to bring an artist who comes from Central America. So for me, Carlos is an amazing artist in Costa Rica who works with children, but also works with composting and farming and food. What I noticed in Matanzas is that everything that people were eating was processed food, processed meat, but everything grows there. So what were the conditions of people being able to grow their own food or have access? The artist who runs the little school with his wife, the wife's parents have a farm. So we brought this pile of compost that you could see, and we invited people to, and he created this blackboard with talking about local plants and recipes with the children. And we invited local people to come and take some compost and soil to their homes and some plants so they can plant their own vegetables. And we cooked, and there was rumba and music. And these were some of the kids, again, that I met on my first visit. And I was in Guatemala with an artist, Regina Gallindo. And I said to Regina, I really want to do something with these children. I want a project for kids. I'm nearly done, 2 minutes. And she told me about a project she did in Bogota, not Bogota, sorry, in Cartagena in Colombia, and where it's called Pasos de Gigantes, in the footsteps of giants. And children create these giant heads of themselves and do a conga down the street. We couldn't make it very big. They were big, but they're supposed to be bigger, but we couldn't get masking tape. I had to bring masking tape with me from Sharjah. Resources are unavailable. And we worked with her collaborator, Guillermo, who's a puppet maker. And it was something super special. And the last project, again, Gabriela Golder, an artist from Argentina, again, all Spanish speaking, was invited to work with people aged 65 to 95, talking about the history of their lives in Cuba and how they held many jobs and had many lives in Cuba. Some of them even told her that, when Obama came to Cuba, he told us we should forget our history, but we will never forget our history. And that's it. I'm done.
谢谢凯西米总监的演说与分享。
我们在第一场 Keynote 听到Hoor的精彩的演讲啊，那其实我刚在听他的这个介绍的过程中，给我很大的冲击啊，因为他在对于策展或者是如何把策展概念介入空间场域这件事情，跟我们平常的想象有一点不一样。好，那我们刚刚也听到他说他比较像是清洁工啊，就是在找场地，在清洁场地，在整理空间，但是在思考那个空间怎么去发挥它一个新的文化的连结。好，那这个东西其实我觉得非常的有趣，就是说国际的双年展经过了全球化的崩解，经过了疫情，其实我们已经重新在另外一个区域政治化的这个想象里面，重新去思考地方跟世界的关系啊。那透过这样的一个想法，我想可以给我们很多思考的一个空间。那我想接下来啊，是我们很宝贵的时间，我们特别邀请到赖香伶啊，他目前是新北市美术馆的馆长啊，然后他的艺术行政经历是非常非常丰富的啊，曾经担任过台北当代艺术馆的馆长，上海外滩美术馆的馆长，还有台湾当代文化实验场就是 CLab 的执行长。那他在推动当代艺术的研究创新跟国际交流还有人才培育上面都有非常丰富的经验跟贡献啊。那我想是不是就先请香伶啊来针对Hoor他今天的第一场的 Keynote 给我们一些回馈。
首先非常我想在这边先跟大家在座的贵宾还有所有的朋友哈，大家这边先跟大家问好哈。那我也非常荣幸哈，能够在这里担任第一场的这个语坛人哈。那谢谢馆长还有台北市立美术馆和地方空间的邀请哈。那昨天晚上我们在其他的一个表演里面有见到那霍尔了哈。那我刚刚看了他的这个非常快速带着我们走过、浏览过全世界好几个不同的这个双年展哈，看了很多的作品啊。那我觉得，我想首先我先跟大家分享哈，就是说我对于就是霍尔他这么多年以来哈，他所兢兢业业所策的展览，他的一些思考哈。那我觉得他其实已经不是在策划一个双年展而已哈，那比较是在打造一个所谓的文化生产的机制哈。那所以，但是回到刚刚我们看到的，他从沙迦双年展好来跟大家分享的时候，其实我看到的其实是如何从一个所谓的地方双年展展开和世界的连接，好，那就是刚刚Jun-Jieh馆长谈到哈，就是一个地方和世界的关系怎么透过双年展好来展开哈。那因为在这样子的地方的语境之下，我们可以看到沙迦双年展这边，它其实是一种它有一种所谓的双栖的意义啊，或者双向的意义。一方面，我觉得它是一种它进行了一种在地的倡议，或者是说他想去提出一个在地的叙事，地方的叙事。那这个在地当然不只是沙迦本身，好，我觉得它应该不只是，应该更是这个全球南方或者是这个。就是这个所谓的这个阿拉伯好，这个整个这个地区的这个所谓的地方或者在地的趋势，那他一向希望说能够超越所谓从西方主流世界的这样子的观点、视点或者是声音哈，提出自己的在地论述，所以这个是非常重要的哈。那第二个，其实可以看得到，他邀请好多不同的这个艺术家哈，来自不同的背景啊，这个。譬如说，我们看到这个 Barbara Walker 可能是一个来自英国的艺术家，但是也有来自于就是这个其他不同地方，可能亚洲的艺术家都在那个地方。那其实他做的其实是一种，也是在面向世界、连接国际哈。所以沙迦双年展对我来讲，它其实一方面它就是一个怎么样把观众带到这个，就是说怎么样把观众或者说把艺术带到这个社会的现场，带到日常生活里面去。所以它是一个社会和艺术的现场，但同时它也好像期待也做成一个智库一样，哈，是一个一个倡议哈，然后它的一些观念，所以等于我们可以看得到这个沙迦双年展，其实之前我知道我们在国内很多朋友哈都有曾经好像结伴去参访过上一届的沙迦双年展哈，我上次听过 Amy 啊、招兰或者是这个佩仪等等哈朋友的分享哈。那我们可以看得到，就它其实是沙迦的双年展，已经就是一个所谓的思想交流的中心哈，知识生产的中心哈，在这个部分，它不只是一个双年展了。那我觉得在这边还有看到一个哈，就是让我也有很大的启发，就是我们看到在这边，可能因为霍尔他的从小的背景本来是一个创作者、艺术家哈，那17岁就开始策展哈，所以他的。作为一个 artist curator 这样子的角色哈，那一路走来，那他其实我们可以看他穿越不同的路径哦，他也在，我觉得我在他身上其实看到一个策展的角色，好或者策展的能动性。那他这边可能在展览中，他可能要面对的哈，其实是在地的群众，那也要面对这个来自于全球不同地方的艺术家，还有这个艺术的工作者哈。那但是他又要能够策展，也要能够当所谓的清洁工，他去发掘不同的场地哈，所以他去改造这个空间，所以其实是这种多项的任务怎么样都在一个所谓的策展人或者是策展人更是一个组织者哈的角度，在他身上可以看得到哈。所以我觉得我在他身上也看到一个所谓的策展人的角色哈，可以多么的这个伟大，多么的多元。但是还有一个就是说，策展行动是如何去扩延？好，就是策展的行动已经从我们想象是一个展览的策划者啊制作者，他如何去扩延？他不是指一个策划展览本身，而是这个行动本身它所具有的文化意义，还有这个社会的意义是什么哈？那我觉得在这边其实很想谈的就是 就是说透过Hoor的像刚刚的演讲哈，我们可以看得到展览本身哈。那我现在所比较想要再来谈的是，我刚刚一路上来看我在思考的比较是这个什么 curatoria， 因为我们今天的活动哈，所以我们这个 curatoria intensive， 它谈的是我们用我先不用策展这个翻译哈，就是 curatoria 这个字它所指涉的，它可以辐射出来的可能性是什么哈？那我觉得这个应该是我们在从这个CIT 19好到现在 CIT 24，我们所不断想要讨论和扩研的意义在这边哈。所以刚刚不管是Jun-Jieh馆长还是 Amy 哈，对我谈到这个所谓的当代策展的这个，对我来讲是一个知能的问题哈。知能它可能它的知识、它的认识论，它是这个能是什么？它的技术哈，它的方法哈。那在实践的方法，所以从一种概念性的东西到这个体现的这个实践之间，它可以产生什么样的文化意义哈？那我觉得这个是最重要，我觉得是我们在讨论 curatoria intensive 其实是重要的。所以在这边我其实很想聊的就是我觉得就是双年展或者是如何作为一个文化生产的机制。好，那对我来讲，我其实刚刚所享受到的不只是非常多很精彩的创作哈，或者是说我看到这个非常美丽的城市哈，很想去哈。以前听过很多朋友说都有去过，但是我觉得我们就思考是双年展它怎么成为一个文化生产的机制哈，我觉得这个是更是重要的哈。那在这边其实我觉得每一个创始者哈，尤其说我想在Hoor的身上，他去从整个去改造了双年展，从一种传统的像博览会式的或者是商展式的双年展，我们刚刚看到第一张图，它转化成一种打散在城市空间里面。那其实甚至从城市空间可以扩延到不同的这个所谓的这个城市空间，包括了生活的空间，包括了这个可能是闲置的，甚至即将废弃的，或者是要经过城市这个改造哈的即将要失去的空间，都能够在这里面哈能够被带出来哈。所以我觉得他在作为一个改造者，其实这个牵涉到一个文化的视野哈。所有的这个创始跟改造，其实牵涉的是一个文化的视野。那还有他的策略哈，就是他的策略是什么？他一定有一个目的。那他到底他在他所有的资源之下，好，那他能够怎么样的行动？他是希望分布，他怎么逐步去接近他想要做到的？那还有当然很重要是那个方法论的问题哈。所以我其实等一下其实会比较希望和这个Hoor来讨论的哈，或者请教他的是关于双年展如何作为这个所谓的文化生产机制的问题哈。那其实我们在谈到这个文化生产机制，其实这几年我们一直在谈文化机构，尤其我们在台湾哈，我们面对了好多这个很多的，我觉得台湾近年来我们看到的是有一种反向哈，一种就是我们很多的新的文化机构。或者是美术馆机构，甚至不断的这个产生出来，但是呢另外一个反向的是，我个人是有点忧心的是，所谓的我们过去在2000年就是第一个 the first decade 哈，第一个10年的时候，我们看到很多的独立空间哈，其实慢慢的就式微了，或者是消失了，或者是它能量就慢慢的就是减低了哈。那这个两个双向的部分，我觉得是很值得我们去检讨哈，或者是去思考。所以我就对我来讲，我觉得一个新文化机构或者是新机构的多元形式，它可以是什么？那当双年展它如果可以，是不是可以成为一种新的这个所谓的这个文化机构生产机制啊？那在这边其实我觉得刚刚可能因为时间的关系啊，就是Hoor跟我们分享的比较是他在这个策划双年展哈。那所以我很想请教Hoor是一个就是在Sharjah的基金会哈，其实不只是双年展，而是在基金会的这个筹办和因为他设立的基金会，那基金会本身它所办理的活动不只是Sharjah双年展，还有一些其他的相关的事务。那这两者之间它如何互相补充、互相滋养哈？那我觉得非常重要的是，他今天其实还没有时间分享，但是我很想在这里哈请教他，而且请他跟大家分享，其实是我们看不到的，不是一个展览的形式，而是说一个是比较是一种比较是一个文化的部署吧。我觉得对于Sharjah基金会来讲，它透过很多的活动哈，那这些活动其实 都是一种并不是就是 one off， 不是一次做完就没有哈，它比较是一个机制。比如说他们的 March meeting 哈，它每一年有一个3月的会议哈，然后或者是他们有一个所谓的 Global Study 哈 University 哈，这样子这个所谓全球研究学院或者全球研究大学这样子2个所谓的机制哈，它并不是只是一个活动。那这2个部分，我个人感觉哈，我来今天进行这个稍微了解了一下，我觉得其实是相当程度的去补充，甚至是滋养了，而且我觉得是给了这个沙迦双年展非常非常重要的这个支持哈。那刚刚结束的这个今年的这个3月的这个 March meeting 哈，里面其实就的题目，其实我觉得他们所讨论的题旨，就是我们现在在当代艺术甚至当代策展常常谈到，是一种所谓集体性的实践，好，谈的就是集体性的力量、集体性的实践哈。那这里面包括的这个谈这个跟集体实践跟社会运动的关系哈。那怎么样去自我组织哈？还有就是一种就是这个集体之间不同的集体或者团体之间，它怎么去透过一种并不是竞争性、一种非竞争性，而是合作性的方式哈，共同去发展哈。那这种共同去协作，那如何透过这个展览特殊的这个展览的制作，或者是这个思想的这个交汇哈，这个交流，去挑战以西方为中心哈这样子的一种思维方式哈等等哈。还有一个所谓的新自由主义的价值哈。那我觉得像这样以今年的这个所谓的集体性实践作为一个题旨所做的这个 March meeting 哈，其实我们可以看得到它的很多部分就回应了，甚至其实是和沙迦这个基金会所办的双年展就有一些对应哈。所以我就很想，我想是不是我想先抛出第一个这个跟霍尔的一个对话或者是提问哈，请他跟我们分享一下。譬如说，他们在办理这个 March meeting 是怎么样的构想，怎么样去制定每一年的这个研究的题目的题旨。那这是一个。第二个就是关于这个他们所谓的这 Global Study University 就是他们也有一个全球研究学院哈。那全球研究学院下面其实它是分了很多的应该全球研究大学下面有很多的学院，包括非洲研究学院、亚洲研究学院，甚至是海洋研究学院等等哈。那这些它如何去互相补充？那他们的构想是怎么样？
Thank you. Well, I have actually a lot to talk about, but there's not enough time. What I would say about the March meeting, it really started a long time ago with just a conversation between Young Arab Theater Group and ourselves. And so we had the Biennale, artists wanted to be in residence, we had the residency, we wanted to meet with people, so we did the March meeting. We were doing so many things, but we didn't have an umbrella organization. And I noticed that, for example, people who are working with us on the Biennale have to go find another job in between, which is not sustainable for them or for us. You work with people, you train them, they work, you have a working relationship, and then suddenly their contract ends, they have to find another job, they have to get a visa somewhere, and then you have to start all over again. So that's always a problem with biennials that are independent, that happen just every 2 years. And another thing is with the audience. If you disappear for 2 years, the audience forget about you. So how do you stay engaged with the public? So we decided to create this umbrella organization, Sharjah Art Foundation, and have exhibitions all year round. So, we're also run little art schools, art centers in different villages and towns. So we're a big team, but our programs keep increasing because of the need or the interest. So we have a short film festival, we have an art book fair, we have the March meeting, and we have a performance festival. So constantly we're growing with our programs. When it comes to the March meeting, it's really a moment to gather people together. At the beginning, we would invite different institutions to come and present what they do, and in the hopes that they'll meet somebody there, and maybe the collaboration is not with us, but maybe, a space in India will end up collaborating with a space in New York because they met in Sharjah. So it was really like a meeting place because we are connected through, Dubai Airport. So it's quite easy as a location for many people to come together. But there isn't one set style or theme for the March meeting. When it came to the last biennial, a lot of Okwi's work that wasn't ready as a curator for the biennial, we used his topics as a conference for the March meeting. So it's very much an academic conference. And then the last March meeting, of course, everything was about Palestine and Gaza, and we had the biggest gathering of Palestinian artists and practitioners from the oldest generation of artists to the youngest. And then also other collectives and groups coming together, like a feminist collective from Guatemala or other parts of the world. So it was a really emotional kind of gathering, but also very artistic in its approach. So I think with those kind of projects and biennials, it's always nice to be flexible and be able to kind of give space for creativity. When people say to me, do you miss being an artist? I'm like, this is my art. I'm still an artist. But I realized that I could be in a position of doing something just for myself, about me, or I could use my platform to help so many people. And in the last 22 years, I've worked with such amazing artists and curators and academics. So it's very rewarding to have that space to share. With the Global Studies University, it's another, so in, sorry, one second. So my father is a historian, and he grew up under the British occupation in Sharjah. So he was a bit of an activist, actually. They called him a terrorist, but he was an activist. And he grew up with all our history being written by the British. Sharjah was a base for the British when they went to India and when they went to Australia, and also when they were attacking Egypt. So the Royal Air Force had a base in Sharjah, which was very crucial. So of course, for a lot of the people living there, they were very, very upset, that we are being occupied by a foreign country. And in the history books, our family were called pirates by the British because we controlled the coast and they wanted to control the coast. So my father, who is actually an agricultural engineer by trade, decided to write his first PhD on the myth of Arab piracy in the Gulf, and he became a historian. And he's constantly writing our histories from through documents and academic research, collecting maps, archives, realizing that it's important for us to write our own histories and not have our histories written for us from one point of view, or sometimes also skewed. So I think about that a lot. My father was friends with Nelson Mandela. He marched with Muhammad Ali in Chicago in the 80s. And I realized, these stories are so important when we look at how we are represented in the world. In 2016, 17, the building Africa Hall was being rebuilt in Sharjah. And I remember there was a building that we grew up with called Africa Hall. It was a cultural space. They had exhibitions, theater, famous poets like Nizar Qabbani were speaking there, but it was called Africa Hall. And it was in 1976, so 4 years before I was born. But I didn't understand why it was called Africa Hall. And when I did my research, it turns out it was my father who built Africa Hall, and the first conference was on African-Arab relations. And it was really looking at pan-Arab, pan-African solidarities, also around the question of Palestine. So he was rebuilding this hall, and I spoke to a colleague of mine who's a professor at Cornell and a curator I worked with, Salah Hassan from Sudan. And I asked him to help me research this hall. And in the African Studies Association journal in the US of 1976, somebody had come to report on the conference in Sharjah. And when I read the report, there was a recommendation to set up an institute. So we decided to set up an institute for African diaspora studies. And I remember we spoke with Okwi and Vizor, and he said, that's a long title, the Africa Institute. So we called it the Africa Institute. And as I was working in Lahore and doing all my research, I realized, okay, there's an opportunity here to work on an Asia Institute, because our population in the UAE is 50% South Asian. you know, our culture has so much South Asian influence, from our food to some words we use. So it's really important to start writing these histories together, and also support academics from these regions. And then with the work I'm doing in Australia with First Nations, so I decided that we're going to have these institutes, Asia Institute, Oceania, Institute of the Americas and Europe, and really try to create a university that has a flow in between all of these continents. So the ocean also is a space in between. We're still in the early stages. Africa Institute has been going and programming since 2018. But the idea of the university is that we are able to now offer master's and PhD programs starting next year. So yeah, everything is like happening at its own pace. We're working out of an old school because our building is not ready. So we have an old school that we renovated. Yeah.
好，那我想说，透过刚刚那个这个霍尔女士，这个 Qasimi 女士的解释哈，那大家可以了解，其实我们看到的沙迦双年展真的并不只是双年展，我觉得更重要的是它这个整个好，这个从沙迦基金会为始哈，它整个部署哈，所以在这边我觉得我看到的其实就是他们基金会我想说这霍尔女士她其实是希望透过基金会的工作哈，去在沙迦哈打造一个所谓的这个文化生产系统哈。那我想这是我的第一个提问哈。那但是我在想说，是不是我们要时间先看看下面的观众不知道有没有提问，然后如果没有，我可以问第二个问题。
好，因为蛮难得的机会啊，就是那个Qasimi女士可以来到台北。那我想刚才这个整个的对话，还有他今天的介绍，有一个东西其实给我还蛮大的冲击的，就是说我们因为台北也有双年展啊，那可是我们筹办双年展似乎常常还会落入一个所谓亚洲区域怎么去把西方当成一个 model 来抗衡，或者甚至于超越这样的一种想法。那相对来说，沙迦比台北更接近欧洲的中心啊。那我们如何去思考？我们可以怎么做啊？我觉得这个其实是一个还蛮有趣的一个可能性。那现在还有10分钟哦，我们先看看现场有没有观众要提问啊，然后我们等一下再看看时间还够不够，可以继续往下进行。现场有观众想要提问吗？好，那个这边有 Grace。
Hi, I'll just speak in English. My question is twofold. I think it was very moving to hear your presentation. I think what I was very surprised to hear that you weren't coming from a place where there is almost like a cultural supremacy. I suppose, you know, given your background and your history in the area, I was very surprised at the tolerance and the diversity with which you curate. So I wanted to maybe hear more about how it came to be that way, or how you came to be that way. Second part of the question is I'm very curious about after the transformation that you put in through art and community. Well, how do these places stay alive? I mean, do you have like a huge army of people working on it? And like, or do new organizations grow by themselves and they start taking care of these things? And how do you kind of maintain this, I would say, even beyond ecosystem kind of growth? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. In terms of like diversity, so yeah, growing up in Sharjah, it's very diverse, and I went to an international school as well. So you're always working with many people, and actually a lot of Emiratis are the minority there. Our population is about 20%, maybe 18% of the population. And the UAE was actually just formed in 71 as a way to get the British to leave us alone, because it was still a British protectorate. We were all, 7 emirates, independent, coming together to become a little stronger. So this idea of coming together is always really, really important. With regards to an army, we have an army complete. We're like 300 people working at the foundation. What I realized, so the Biennial was one project, but the Department of Culture, they do many things. There's also the museums department that do many things. But the cultural department, they had the Biennale, the museum, the Calligraphy Biennale, Islamic Arts Festival, the book fair, the theater festival, and slowly each of us started being more independent. The museums became under all museums department. The book fair became separate. It was under a whole publishing department. It became a big institution. And the Biennial, we were probably the first to pull out. And then the Department of Culture also started to restructure, and they asked us, do you want to take the Calligraphy Biennial and the Islamic Festival? I said, no, I don't know anything about calligraphy, and I don't do I don't know anything about Islamic art or anything like that. I just work in contemporary art. But I'm interested in the art centers, because each town and village had a little center where they teach painting, drawing, ceramics, and I wasn't happy with the way they were teaching them. It wasn't so energizing, or it was a little bit boring. So to do that, we need staff, obviously, but we staff from those towns as well. So one of our biggest number of staff members are actually in the learning department, but also in the technical team. We have our own carpenters as well, carpentry, AV. And what ends up happening is, let's say the book fair is being set up, they hire our team to do the whole layout. So we don't hire companies to come to help us build and set up in the Biennial, but people hire us. So that's kind of a way to create an ecosystem. And you can also guarantee the quality of work, because you know the people that we work with, I've worked with some of them for 20 years. And when artists come back, there's always a relationship with the same people. Yeah, but it's also investing in your team. It's important.
OK， 谢谢。机会很难得，是不是再开放一个问题？好。
非常谢谢刚刚的那个 presentation。然后我想问的是，因为今天毕竟是很强调地方性的一个经验的分享。那地方它当然总是跟历史还有社会以及政治性的建构还有诠释有关的。那刚刚在Hoor的分享里面，当然也看到非常强烈的关于政治、社会或者是历史性批判意识在里面。但我好奇的是，因为像这一种方式，它总是可能某种程度上带有一些诠释的风险，所以好奇的是在这样子的过程之中，有没有遭遇到任何的困难，以及在这样子的脉络下，沙迦双年展又如何在政治历史跟批判性意识上跟其他的国际产生连接，然后如何定位自己，这样，谢谢。
Yes, thank you for that. Actually, the first biennial I curated in Sharjah Biennial in 2002, we opened April 2003 when the American troops were marching into Iraq. So we opened at the time of the Iraq War. So from the beginning, it's always politically charged. Do you open the exhibition? Do you close it? No, we open it. It's a statement, and it's marking a historic moment. And of course, our part of the world has always undergone different struggles, from the Iran-Iraq war to Desert Storm, Kuwait and Iraq, to Syria, Palestine since 1948 and even earlier. It was always charged politically. I think everybody grew up in our part of the world with the cause of Palestine. Palestine is in everyone's heart. I mean, I wear it on my chest, It's a cause that has been ingrained through generations. Now a lot of people are scared to speak, a lot of people are threatened to speak, but I think at the end of the day, history remembers those who spoke and those who didn't, and I think if you have a chance and you're able to, you don't have to shout it from the rooftops, but you can do something. You can educate people, you can show them what is really happening, you could use your voice, you could call a friend and check up on them. I think those are many ways that you can engage politically. Not everybody has to do it publicly. I do it because I have an opportunity to have the microphone, so I do it because I feel I'm in a place of privilege. I am holding the microphone. They don't have a microphone. So I'm going to talk about them while I'm here.
好，因为时间也差不多哈，那是不是再请Hsiang-Ling给一个 conclusion？
好，我觉得因为今天时间有限哈，其实可以展开的题目可以展开的讨论其实蛮多的哈。那我觉得我想说最后还是回到双年展哈，就是或许让那个Hoor跟我们分享一下哈，就是说刚刚我提出来就是双年展，我们怎么看待双年展哈？譬如说北美馆其实在多年的这个双年展举办的时候，中间其实每一年我们看到不同的议题哈，就看我们最近的就是去年的什么小宇宙等等，但是其实在这个中间，其实讨论双年展本身哈，它的功能或者它的能动性或者它的可能性，其实有2个展览哈，我记得是之前这个应该说美术馆作为文化生态系统那一次哈，还有我特别查一下哈。那 anyway 就是我觉得还是想要回到这个双年展哈，它的除了只是去了解全球的这些全球的议题，或者说我们了解不同地区的艺术家哈，或者的政治社会经济这样子的这个状况之外呢，那双年展它的未来的发展是什么哈？它可以有什么样子的不同的或者扩延的可能性？那我知道Hoor现在他也担任这个国际的双年展的主席哈，国际双年展协会的主席。那他自己其实自己所主张的双年展的概念，其实会有别于所谓的他甚至是反这种威尼斯双年展式的这种国家馆哈，这个 nation state 为单位的这样子的一种论述哈。那他其实所倡议的是一个不太一样的双年展哈，重视在地的叙事。但是我想请问Hoor，就当你在面对你作为一个这个国际双年展协会的主席的时候，你会面对来自不同的地域不同的这个地方的这个处境哈，或者不同的这个国家这样子的资源哈，还有条件，还有对艺术的认知不同的时候，你大概是怎么样去讨论双年展？那未来会有什么样的活动或者行动啊，带着大家一起来讨论双年展，或者是来促进双年展不同地方双年展之间的协作呢？还是有什么样的具体的项目？谢谢。
So when it comes to legacy, actually, now that I've been doing the Sharjah Biennial for 22 years, I realized it takes 20 years to see how the audiences react and change. I mean, we had to extend the biennial by 1 more month because of demand of people wanting to visit. And a lot of the children that used to come and do the workshops are now working at our visitor's guide. So maybe you had tours by some of them when you visited, but they came as children and did workshops. So when the biennial closed, the first thing I could say to the team was like, my proudest moment was all of you because of the work that they put in to the project. And just to see how far we've come also as a community of art workers in the region. So it takes time. I think that's really important to say, and it shows in the visitors and the people. In terms of the International Biennial Association, it was launched in Gwangju. So I'm the second president. The first was Young-Woo Lee in Gwangju. And when the reason that I became president is nobody else wanted to do it. And everybody's too busy. I'm never too busy. I'm exhausted, but I'm never too busy. I'm going to find the time to do it. And I realize it's such an opportunity for biennials to work together, because biennials always have dramas. Every single one of us had some kind of drama or controversy, and we're always looking for support from each other. You know, how do you navigate this? How do you work with the visa issues with artists? Or so why don't we continue this community and not just be an association, but actually engage? So we have an active program. We have a new website. Alia Swastika from Jharkhand is also on the board of IBA since the beginning. So it's really important that we're all from all over the world, but that we are a community. Maybe we want to collaborate on some projects. We want to co-commission. So I'm waiting till somebody else decides that they can take over. But right now it seems that I still have some work to do. But you can go to the website, biennialassociation.org. Yeah.
I think the Biennial Foundation is different.
Biennial Foundation is different. So they launched together. They did a conference together in Gwangju. But Biennial Foundation is more about research around biennials, and I think now they started an advisory section, so you can hire them to give you advice on biennials. The Biennial Association is us biennial workers coming together and talking. So it's more about the people that do the work rather. It's open to other members, so academics and curators are welcome to join. But it's more about how we work on biennials rather than just research. Yeah.
好，非常谢谢 Hoor 今天的经验分享啊！我想他不管他今天的 present 或者是他刚刚的说明，开启了很多我们在下午还有明天啊，可能都会讨论到的很多不同的综合的议题。那因为时间的关系啊，那这一场可能必须要在这边结束。但是我们今天的最后一场会有一个综合的 panel discussion， 所以可能到时候后还可以再跟我们多分享一些议题的经验啊。那我们是不是再次掌声谢谢今天Hoor跟Hsiang-Ling的莅临，谢谢。